The LA Rams are heading to Cincinnati still as 2.5 point dogs, even with Joe Burrow. Expected to be a game time decision. The total is set at 43.5. This is Showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. And before we head over to DraftKings, we want to remind you that you can access all of our fantasy content, including insights, props, worksheets, and more by taking advantage of our fantasy package available on the Sharp Football website. Right now, we're running a special offer for listeners, code ANGLES for 15% off any fantasy packages. The 15% discount also extends to every package site wide, including our props package that went 13-5 in week 2. Check it out in the podcast description or use the code ANGLES during checkout to purchase your subscription. Let's head on over to DraftKings and talk about this slate. We've got basically two slates to talk about, whether Joe Burrow is going to be in or Joe Burrow is going to be out. So we're going to have to be quick with this one. So Joe Burrow's got the calf injury that he's been dealing with and just has not looked himself through the first 2 weeks. The offense has been abysmal. One of the games was in a storm, so it was tough to tell if week 1 was just kind of a dud, and then week 2 confirmed, yes, Joe Burrow is not healthy. He's not playing as himself. The offense is not clicking. So Joe Burrow's at 11,400. They are the home favorite, so usually we would be gravitating towards that team, towards that offense. But in this game, I'm all in on the Rams, and I don't bet often, but if I were betting, I would also be taking the Rams with points. Well, I would take the Rams money line if I were going to be a betting man for this game. So Joe Burrow at 11,400 is just a little bit too expensive when he just is clearly not right. There's no indication to give that he's going to bounce back in any way. There's been no positive buzz this week. So unless the team is just holding the cards very, very tight to their chest and basically making up that Joe Burrow is having trouble with his calf, I don't see any reason to invest in he or the Cincinnati offense. And if you had Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell being projected for more points than T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on your 2023 bingo card, I think that you have already won because that is the case already here in week 3. So Puka Nacua is questionable. He's being projected as in. He broke the all-time NFL record for targets and receptions through his first 2 games. And Tutu Atwell has been a quality starter as well, with Cooper Kupp out injured on injury reserve with the hamstring injury. So as crazy as it may seem, it's actually this LA Rams offense that's firing on all cylinders, and they looked very good in their first 2 games. Obviously, they run into the 49ers in week 2. That's going to be tough for anybody. 49ers have a chance to be the best team in the NFL this season. So it's no shame there that the Rams couldn't get it done against the 49ers, but they look good. I mean, Puka Nacua at 10,000 is too cheap. We're getting basically, this feels insane to say, I can't believe that I'm saying it, but Puka Nacua was basically Cooper Kupp through the first 2 weeks. And so getting Cooper Kupp at 10,000 is absolutely insane. Cooper Kupp was like a $12,800 player when healthy. So unless the first 2 weeks were just a total fluke, which I do not believe that is going to be the case, then Puka Nacua is just an insane play at 10,000. He's going to be extremely popular, of course, but that's just going to come with the territory at 10,000 with a close to 30% market share. Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to find his way into your lineup. So what we can do is we can overstack the Rams, which is probably what I'm going to lean into. This game is going to feel like a 3-by-3 heavy kind of day. And so we'll go 4-2 with the Rams. We'll go actually 2-4 with the Rams. We'll go 1-5 with the Rams, things like that. So Matthew Stafford at 10,200, just that's very fair. The very fair price for him, and he's who we're going to have to stack around for this slate. Kyren Williams already handled 100% of the touches in week 2, which is a road mark for a lot of running backs to hit or to hit that 100% mark, and he is only 9,000, and Cam Akers got shipped off to Minnesota. So Kyren Williams as a true workhorse back with a receiving role at 9,000 is also sticks with the theme of being egregious, right? Because we're talking about Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, Kyren Williams, and all of them are incredible fantasy plays, and it feels like we're living in the Matrix. But if you just approach this slate as if you're talking about like an incredible offense with quality weapons. I mean, frankly, if you just pretend that Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, and Kyron Williams are instead Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon, it makes a ton of sense, right? So on this slate, we're in the upside down here. So T. Higgins at 8,600. It's just going to be hard to get to T. Higgins or Joe Mixon when Kyron Williams is sitting right there at 9,000. Kyron Williams helps us stack the Rams offense. Like I said, we're going to have to overstack the Rams offense if we're going to be unique on this slate. So T. Higgins at 8,600, Joe Mixon at 8,400. They're both fine if they fit, because after you get past Stafford, Nacua, Tutu, Kyron, it gets thin. So if you're playing 20 max or 150 max, it's going to get difficult to differentiate your lineups. You're going to have to go with like different one-offs from the Bengals. And typically when you play a one-off, most people land on one-offs that are cheap. So they just want to stack they want to build their stack around studs and then bring back a cheap player. So if you can bring back like a T. Higgins or something like that, that's kind of what we were trying to do with Darren Waller on a slate or two ago, where if you bring back Darren Waller, you kind of jumble everything up and differentiate yourself and try to keep yourself from being duplicated. You can do the same thing this week instead of bringing back your Tyler Boyd or something like that and stacking all of these expensive Rams. You can flip it, get a cheap Ram in there, and then stack T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, or Jamar Chase, who I neglected to talk about simply because the offense is not operating in a capacity to warrant 11,000 for Jamar Chase. Now he is incredible, of course. And even with a backup quarterback, in fact, a backup quarterback might just pepper Jamar Chase more than spreading the ball around. So I would never completely omit Jamar Chase from your builds. He's not someone I'm going to prioritize. His roster percentage is not going to be incredibly high because he's too expensive. So it may be a good week to use Jamar Chase as your single run back and really lay into that theory that I was just talking about of playing a bunch of Rams and then bringing it back with a very, very expensive player in Jamar Chase. And he could be played by himself, whether Joe Burrow's in and unhealthy or whether we get Jake Browning. I'm totally fine with playing Jamar Chase just by himself. Not in captain, though. I won't have any Cincinnati players recommended at captain for this week. So Joe Mixon, I already touched on, is fine for a bring back, right? So he's going to be plenty involved in the game. Tutu Atwell at 7,000 is just kind of a steal. Kind of makes everything fit right, and especially since Tyler Higbee is at 6,200, and Tyler Higbee's usage is nowhere near what Tutu Atwell has been. So I don't see how I would land on Tyler Higbee on this slate with Tutu Atwell just a bit higher, and his roster percentage not being too terribly egregious. I mean, if you can fit Matt Stafford and captain with Nacua, Tutu, and Kyron, and still have some money to pay up for one of those Bengals players we're excited about, then absolutely, and we'll build lineups around that in just a moment. That brings us down to the Tyler Boyd conversation at 5,200. So Tyler Boyd is somebody that you could bring back, but that's going to be your typical build. I bet you when we get to building here in just a second, the money that we have remaining is going to be enough for pretty much like a Tyler Boyd and a punt after we stack those four Rams that we really want to stack. So it's going to be really popular to do that. That means that you're going to have to swap one of the popular Rams players with an expensive Bengals player, and then you're going to have to go down to like a Van Jefferson or something like that. And Van Jefferson's involvement has been odd to start the season. I would not have expected him to have lost a starting role to both Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, but we've beat that dead horse enough. I mean, we're going into week 3 and I'm starting to trust those guys. So Van Jefferson is fine in large field tournaments because, like I said, you're kind of going to have to do that to build lineups that are unique from the field. Go down to Van Jefferson, still do your Ram stack, pay up for a T. Higgins or a Joe Mixon or something like that. Now you've got the two running backs with Joe Mixon. You've got Travion Williams, and then we'll get down to Chase Brown in a moment, or Chris Evans in a moment. But neither of them have been as involved as we would have thought when we were deep into best ball season. So it's not super exciting, especially since Travion Williams is 3,800. There's just not a lot of reason to go there. If you go down a bit, you've got Benjamin Skoranek at 600, and then you've got Chris Evans at at 200. I mean, there's not a ton of punt plays, but it's fine because we have so many mid-range options that we're comfortable with. Now let's touch on the non-Joe Burrow offense. Unfortunately, it doesn't change much. So if Joe Burrow is deemed out, then we're going with the same theory. There are instances in which you would play heavily. Like one of my most successful slates ever was Cooper Rush slate when he was playing for Dak Prescott against the Vikings. So there are instances in which the cheap backup quarterback that becomes a starter late in the week ends up turning the tides. However, DraftKings kind of run that for us at putting Jake Browning at 8,000 instead of the $6,000 that you usually see for a backup quarterback. So he's already too expensive to even it. Like it's not worth it. You don't save enough money by completely flipping your game plan and going to a heavy Cincinnati night just because Joe Burrow's out and the backup's going to play. He's just too expensive. So there are two different universes to consider Joe Burrow in and Joe Burrow out, but it's not going to change how we build our lineups too terribly much. As a Joe Burrow fan, I hope he comes out and just looks incredible and looks like himself. But I don't believe that there's anything that you can point to say that that's going to happen. And Zach Taylor's not looking great either, by the way. So it's not all Joe Burrow and his it's not all Joe Burrow and his calf. Zach Taylor's not calling great games, not seeing the field well either. So there's just not a ton of reasons to invest in Cincinnati. We just have to figure out how we can be unique about stacking these Rams. And Matthew Stafford's a great place to start. So let's get into building some lineups because Matthew Stafford at captain is going to let us do a lot. And not only will it let us do a lot, but his captain roster percentage is going to be much lower than Puka Nacua's. So let's throw Puka Nacua in. I mean, he's going to be in every build unless you're specifically trying to differentiate. And if you're going to differentiate by excluding Puka Nacua, then you're going to want to go with like a Van Jefferson or something like that, someone who directly can negatively correlate to Puka Nacua. I also want Kyron Williams, and we'll also start with Tutu Atwell, and we'll just see what we've got left. This is where we were talking about. We probably have like Tyler Boyd in a punt. Let's just go ahead, click Tyler Boyd, and I'll show you what most of the field's going to want to do. So if you want to run a 5x1, this is beautiful. I mean, there's only $100 left, but your prototypical 5x1 is stacking all the studs from the winning team, and then one bring back and include the defense, which is going to be the defense is going to be in the optimal lineup for an onslaught over 50% of the time. I don't know what the exact number is. So let's go ahead and so that's going to be a popular build there. But in smaller fields, in smaller fields, you can always go with an onslaught and feel good about it, even if there's only $100 on the table, even if it seems kind of chalky. Only like 10% of the field is ever going to be rostering an onslaught anyway. So if you really like a 5x1, you've got the defense involved, you can just go ahead and submit it and feel like you're probably not going to get duped. But now we have the instance where we don't want to just do exactly what the field is going to do and play Tyler Boyd in the defense here. So we're going to have to take one of these guys out. For me, we're going to go ahead and take out Kyron Williams, and we're going to insert something like T. Higgins. And then now we can come down to something like a Van Jefferson, and that leaves us with 4,700, and 4,700 gets us a kicker. I like either kicker in this game. Either kicker is fine, especially with the low total. Either defense, I guess, technically works. You're not going to want to go with the Bengals with Matt Stafford at captain unless it's just extremely large field and you're playing 150 max and you decide not to omit that rule just to get crazy. That's totally fine too. So here's a lineup in which you can heavily stack Matthew Stafford with his three starting receivers, bring it back with T. Higgins. You could also bring it back with Joe Mixon, I'm sure. And if you do that, you are going to, still have enough for either kicker. So, Mixon and McPherson to go. So Matthew Stafford, captain, Puka Nacua, Joe Mixon, Tutu Atwell, Van Jefferson, and Evan McPherson. So those are a few ways you can do it. I guess we can do a Puka Nacua lineup since we have time and we're excited about him. Actually, you know what? let's do a Kyron Williams captain because I feel like that's a solid angle for this one with so much excitement around Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. But if you're gonna go Kyron Williams at captain, you're gonna want to do like max one on his receivers. So we'll just start Puka Nacua in and eat that chalk, and then we'll do maybe Rams defense, and how much money do we have to work with now? T. Higgins, and that's going to leave us with 4,300. We're not going to do both kickers. Maybe a Travion Williams you could throw in there, but it gets really, really thin once you get under that 4,000 price range. So not a ton that you're excited about doing here. I guess technically you could go Evan McPherson since it is a low total, and go Kyron Williams at captain, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Rams, T. Higgins, and Evan McPherson. I personally don't like playing the opposing kicker to my defense just because it feels disgusting for those points to correlate negatively. But it doesn't actually tend to matter if you look back at it. It just feels gross. You're with your defense, you're looking for turnovers and touchdowns. So the points that you get from holding an offense to a low total is actually should not factor too heavily into your consideration. It just feels disgusting when you're top of the leaderboards and then your kicker hits a long field goal. You feel good about it, but your position doesn't move because your defense just lost points. Either way, this is a solid lineup. You're going to want to get a little gross on this 43.5 point over under. So that's going to do it for today for this showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. Make sure you use promo code ANGLES to get your subscription, and we will catch y'all next week. Peace.